It is our pleasure to be joined by one of the best analysts covering college basketball. You see him on ESPN, you hear him on SiriusXM radio. First and foremost, thank you for your service, sir.
My man.
Chris Spatola, how we doing, baby? It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you, man. I spent so much time in Big 12 country during the college hoop season. I thought at least at some point I'd run into you somewhere.
I I know, right? Do you want to talk about the problems my Sooners had this season, man? It was not a fun year for the squad.
Yeah, I know. Outside of the Alabama win, which was one of the more remarkable, perplexing, puzzling wins of the season, outside of that, I'm with you. It was a tough year.
Yeah, big bounce back year next year for Porter Moser in year 3. That's what I'm going to keep telling myself, man. Okay, let's talk Final Four. You look at this Final Four. Just I don't want to say it's abnormal, but certainly a lot different than what we saw with all the Blue Bloods a year ago. There's been a lot of discourse about, hey, is this good for the sport? What's it mean for ratings? Like all this stuff. 3 teams in the Final Four for the first time. Like, I got to imagine you think this is healthy for college basketball, right?
I do think it's healthy, and I think what it takes is I think we've got to get, particularly in college basketball, because it's different than football. We've got to get the idea of brand names dominating the Final Four like they do in the college football playoff. Because this is it's a tournament that starts with 68 teams. It's incredibly democratic. It's the one and done format. It's all that we know. But the other thing, Gabe, is like the world is a lot flatter in college basketball. I mean, there are more good players. There are players everywhere. I think the COVID years had a real impact on the sport to begin with. And I just think this is a product of the times. I mean, FAU is a good team. They were in the top 25 this year. They've won 35 games. San Diego State has been a perennial good team in the Mountain West. They've been in the NCAA tournament before. Miami was in the Elite Eight last year. And then UConn is, to me, a blue blood program. So I think when you do a little bit of a dive into the weeds, it's not all that shocking, the composition of this Final Four, but I do think I think it's a harbinger of things to come here.
Looking at the 4 teams, right? FAU, San Diego State, UConn, and Miami. Do you think any of these teams have a significant coaching advantage? Like I feel like a lot of times when we get to this point in the tournament, it's about, okay, what coaches have been there? You know, how can they prepare their team? They've been through that. We really don't have that, right?
Yeah, no, we don't. I mean, 3 of these guys are head coaches in the Final Four for the first time, and one of them, Jim Larinaga, hadn't been to the Final Four since 2006, and that was with George Mason. So he's doing it largely for the first time here. It's I don't think. Look, I was a director of operations at Duke when we won a national championship, so I have experienced it on a coaching staff. There is, fortunately, we were working for Coach K, who had been there a number of times before. But there is nothing you can do, I think, Gabe, to prepare yourself or your team for everything that goes on at that event. And the basketball, to be honest with you, is the least of the concerns. It's all the external stuff that goes on at a Final Four. You're there for a long time, especially if you play on Monday. So it's dealing with all of the external stuff. I think that all of these coaches are going to have to deal with. But fortunately, again, I think each of them knows how they win at this point, and so there's identities that are set. You kind of know who you are as a basketball team, and now you just have to attack Houston and deal with all of the other stuff that's product of a Final Four.
All right, let's look at the matchups. First game, FAU against San Diego State. When you look at the roster, San Diego State, a much older team than FAU, probably a little more mature guys, a lot of 4th year, 5th year type of guys. But how do you view this matchup, right? 2 teams that we didn't necessarily expect to be here.
Yeah, I think the thing with both of these teams, Gabe, is they remind, both have had to come from behind in order to get here. I mean, San Diego State was down in the second half to Alabama, ended up coming back, winning that game. And it was the same in their game against Creighton. I mean, they're down late in that game. They've got to sort of just stay in the fight. And it's the same with FAU. I mean, they're down 7 late in that game, and they end up having to come back and fight to win that. They both remind me of a boxer who's, basically lining up and saying, I'm going 12 rounds. Now, I may take a haymaker in the sixth. We may go back and forth, and there may be a spraying of haymakers in the seventh and the eighth. But by the 12th round, you better be on your best because my will to win is going to be there. And it's a bit of an esoteric take, but I think it's indicative of both of these teams. I think they both have the right attitude. I think a lot of winning at this point in the season is about attitude. Not that playing well isn't important, but all of these teams are playing well by the time you get to an Elite Eight and a Final Four. I think both of these teams believe they should be here. I think it's a big part of it. Look, I think FAU is going to win this game because I think they combine that level of defense, that level of toughness, and that level of depth that San Diego State has with the ability to score. They can make threes. They're making 10 threes a game over the course of the season. They haven't shot it as well in the tournament, and they've still been able to win. They're getting offensive rebounds. They're getting to the foul line. Their bench has given them 17 points a game. So I just think offensively, particularly late in that game, I favor FAU, and so I think they're going to win it. But I think this is going to be an absolute fight.
I'm with you. I will say that San Diego State Creighton game caused me physical pain watching all those missed shots. My goodness, man. That was a tough watch. It was. But we'll see. Do you think – how big of a role do you think Vlad Golden will have in that game? Right. I thought he stepped up in a big way in their Elite Eight game. And I'm not sure San Diego State has much of an answer for him if he plays the way he's been playing these last couple.
Yeah, it's a good question because he didn't have a great tournament. He did not have a good first round, second round game. He played a little bit better in the Sweet 16, and then he absolutely killed Kansas State. The good thing for them is their backup is good. Their backup was their leading scorer. Gabriel Rosado was their leading scorer in the first round matchup they had against Memphis. I think he's important, and I think he's particularly important after you see what San Diego State and their front line, they're deeper up there, what their front line did to Ryan Kalkbrenner by the end of that game. I thought he wore down. I thought their physicality took him out of the game. So Golden's important. I think he's mostly important for giving them that gravity, particularly in the high pick and roll stuff. Again, they're a good, I think, gang rebounding team. So it's not necessarily that, but it's about his gravity, rim running to the basket. Can they throw it to him a little bit? Maybe you pick up some cheap fouls on that front line for San Diego State. I think he's important, but again, I think this game comes down to their ability to spread it, their ability to get into the paint, and their ability to get some cheap stuff. They're going to have to. The thing is, Gabe, they're going to have to take better care of the ball. They would have won that Kansas State game going away if they didn't turn it over 22 times. Kansas State scored 30 points off of those 22 turnovers. So they got to take care of the ball. And again, if they do that, I think their offense can really get some stuff done.
Yep. I think even though not the big brand name, is going to be a fun game. Okay. The other one, you look at UConn versus Miami. UConn's killing everyone in the tournament. Like, how can Miami, not only how can they win this, can they keep it close? Like, do you think they have the personnel to play with UConn, who seems to have, three high-level guys that are going to be pros?
Yeah, I do. I actually think they're going to win the game, to be candid. I do. First of all, I think path matters. And look, I think there's the one side of the coin with UConn saying, look, they're beating teams by an average of 22 points a game in this tournament. There's the other side of the coin that says, man, they haven't really been tested late in these games in this tournament. Whereas Miami, a team that played in the Elite Eight last year, had the competitive equity that comes with losing a game the way they lost that game to Kansas. Now here they are in the Final Four, and they got here by having to come back down 13 in the second half in that game in the Elite Eight to get here. There's equity, I think, that comes from that. And Texas is good, obviously. So I think Miami is incredibly unique. They're built a little bit like a mid-major team, not in talent, but in terms of profile. They're really off the bounce. They can really spread you out. Chad Omeir's only 6'7", but as Kelvin Sampson said, he was the strongest frontline guy they had played all year. He really is a dirty work, embraces his role kind of a guy. It's a team that knows how they win. And I think late in that game, Gabe, to have three alphas, three guys who can go get you a bucket in a tournament where these possessions become so magnified, to have a Jordan Miller, who is a pro, to have Isaiah Wong and Nigel Pack, three dudes who can go get you really any kind of bucket you need. I think that's a big difference maker. And again, a Miami team that's got some scar tissue. They got some metal. They got a little bit of that, that equity, I like to call it, going into this game that I think helps them late in the second half against UConn.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, we saw Miami just get easy basket after easy basket in the paint against Texas in that Elite Eight game. I got to think you look at what Sonogo, Klingon, Caravan, like I can't imagine they're going to get that many easy baskets at the rim like they did. Are they going to have to just hit some more threes? Are they going to have to take some more threes? Because they beat that Texas team. They only made 2 threes in that game, which is crazy to imagine you can win an Elite Eight game only hitting 2 threes in today's day and age of college basketball.
Yeah, the one thing they're doing, and this gets back to the point about, they're not a volume 3-point shooting team. They only make on the season about 7 a game, which is a low figure. What they've done in this tournament is they have dominated at the foul line, both getting there and making free throws. It's how they want. Honestly, it's really how they beat Texas. They're plus 32 at the foul line in this tournament. And again, I mean, that's a massive number. That's 5 threes, a little over 5 threes there. So, they're getting to the foul line. I think they put a lot of pressure on defenses with their ability to drive it. Norchad Omier and that high pick and roll in the middle third of the floor has an ability to drag, big guys away from the rim, which I think they're going to be able to do. They're just a really unique matchup. And the thing about them, Gabe, like they're a team that just kind of balls, like they just play. And so much of that comeback against Texas was Texas got really tight. Texas was playing not to lose, whereas Miami, they were just balling. They were just playing. They were just off the dribble and were playing with a looser string. And I think that's kind of who they are. And so, that's who I think they're going to be. I think this game's going to be wide open, spread them out, off the dribble, up and down. And I think in a game like that, I think it favors the team with more ball handlers, more alphas on the offensive end.
Okay, so you like FAU. You like Miami. Who do you like on Monday night then?
It's hard for me to go away from the Miami Hurricanes, and I'm having a hard time because I really do like FAU. Like that is not placating them, but I think it's Jim Larrañaga's time. No slight to Dusty May. I think he's got a long career, and I don't imagine it's going to be completely at FAU. I think he's going to be probably coming to the Power Five closest to some of us at some point. I think this is Jim Larrañaga's year. I think when in this day and age, Gabe, of 2023, where we are constantly, as media people, obsessing over roster management and how do you build a roster with the volatility and the transfers and the NIL, I think you're looking at a Miami team that this is perfect roster construction. I mean, they brought back like 8 guys from last year. So you got a little competitive equity, a team that lost in the Elite Eight, a team that's been together. You've got some freshmen who last year who became sophomores this year, so you could still grow young players into your program. Wooga Poplar, Bensley Joseph. And then you sprinkle in 2 transfers in Norchad Omier and Nigel Pack, who have been fantastic and have fit really well alongside those guys who were in the program last year. I think the dynamic, I think the chemistry, I think all of that is really, really good. And I think at the end of the day, the team that can play offense, and it's not that they can't play defense, because their defense and their rebounding is a big part of why they are here. But I think at this point in the tournament, a team that can really score it and get after it on that end, I like Miami in that championship game.
Do you have any concern that your judgment is being clouded by the fact that you host a show on SiriusXM ACC radio, and it would give you a lot more content to talk about if Miami wins?
Of course, that's my concern. We're all biased. I mean, if we're all not rooting for the channels that have the rights to our leagues or have, I mean, give me a break.
I was heartbroken when K-State and Texas lost, and I'm an OU guy, and I was like, Texas, how are you going to get lemon booty like that and just clam up in the last 9 minutes of that game?
Yeah, dude. I've got so close to those programs in the Big 12 because I'm there like all season. And I mean, I'm at the Big 12 tournament and we're in talking to Rodney Terry prior to the championship game in a back office there. And out from the bathroom comes Christian Bishop, and he had lit the bathroom up, and he's talking to us about it. That's how close we got to these teams by the end of the season. So I'm with you, dude. I worked with the Big 12. I got close to them. I was bummed to see those teams leave the tournament, and now here I do the show on ACC, and I'm riding with them. So it's all about me.
I completely understand that. Completely understand. All right, last one. I'll let you get out of here, man. How do we fix OU basketball? You've been part of national championships. Like, fix it. How do we fix this thing? How do we get this thing rolling in Norman? Come on.
Well, I think the first thing is we can't panic. I think you have the right guy. I don't know how you feel. Just in my interactions with Porter Moser, I think he's terrific. I think it's very hard to win young in this league. And so I think you saw him go in the direction of some of those younger players, which I think was the right move, because I think it gets to the second point. In order to get a little bit more athletic, he had to go in the direction of those younger players. What that meant is you're taking guys like Tanner Groves off the floor a little bit more. Jacob Groves, just hasn't been a great fit. But I think as those younger players, hopefully they stay at OU, Gabe, and I'll leave that up to you and your NIL money that you pay those guys. As those guys get more experience, I think they're the right guys, and I think Porter's the right guy. But you got to get older in that league, and then maybe you hit the portal and maybe you get a guy or two that can help supplement what they have. But I think they're going in the right direction. It's just a brutal league to have to build from the bottom up in.
I hear you. I wonder if Larinaga will let John Ruiz get out there and cut down a piece of the net if they actually win it all.
He absolutely should.
He definitely should.
Of course he should.
I'm sure that whole narrative has been exhausting to talk about for you guys over at ACC Radio. Chris, you're the man. You're one of the best doing it. I always appreciate catching up with you. Thanks for the time, buddy.
Pleasure's all mine, Gabe. I appreciate you bringing me on here.